Hello and a very warm welcome to you. Good to be back. The young woman known as the Bethnal Green Bride has nowhere to go. Shamima Begum's been stripped of her British citizenship after living in Daesh-held Syria. So what happens next, and is she being unfairly vilified? You're watching Roundtable with me, David Foster. According to Shamima Begum, she's done nothing wrong. She didn't fight with Daesh. She didn't encourage them. At worst, she says she understood the motives. Her husband says all she's done is be mother to their 3 children, and yet the call for her to face retribution is growing louder. And her case isn't the only one. Where do we go from here?
It was on these streets where 3 teenage girls spent their childhood before they swore allegiance to one of the most dangerous terrorist organisations in the world.
This is where I grew up, at the heart of East London, a short distance away from where British Bangladeshi teenager Shamima Begum lived before she left for Syria. I've come back to find out what this community thinks about one of their own being treated like a militant.
When Shamima Begum was discovered in a Syrian refugee camp by a UK journalist last month, her words caused a media frenzy. Once again, her community found themselves in the midst of a divisive public debate.
She made a terrible mistake, but then again, she was a child. She was only 15.
I think they did right to take her citizenship away, because it does matter the safety of everyone who's living in London.
Initially, UK Home Secretary Sajid Javid was clear he would revoke her citizenship. But just last week, Javid admitted to Parliament it could prove hugely difficult to strip Shamima Begum of her British passport if it would leave her stateless.
Stripping somebody of their citizenship is draconian because essentially it's not simply a matter of stopping them travelling or re-entering the UK, but it's depriving them of rights.
With Daesh clinging to its last stronghold, US President Donald Trump has said the EU must take back their fighters, including the UK.
The decision by the Home Secretary very much punches a hole through liberal democracy because it is not applying those laws which we have in order to deal with people like Shamima Begum.
But is the government prepared to deal with UK nationals who they say turned their back on British values?
Muslims or people of colour should not feel that, just because they've got a link to another country, that their citizenship is at risk.
Will Shamima ever be allowed to come back to what she says is her rightful home? Nishat Ismail, Roundtable.
I'm very pleased to say that joining us via Skype from Florence, we have Richard McNeil-Willson, extremism and counter-terrorism researcher. On Skype from London, Afia Ahmed, a writer who contributed to the book It's Not About the Burqa. Ellie Green is here from the British Foreign Policy think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and immigration and human rights lawyer Fahad Ansari makes up our panel today. Great to have you all with us. Fahad, let me ask you first of all, clear up something that was left a little bit unclear by the news this week. Has she already been stripped of her British citizenship?
She has been deprived of her citizenship. The moment she receives the order, or her family received it, she's been deprived.
So what happens now?
It's possible for her to appeal against that decision, but she has 28 days to do so, which obviously 2 weeks has already elapsed. And as far as I'm aware, she has not instructed any lawyer. And it seems quite difficult to get instructions from her.
And yet it could be illegal to take her citizenship off her if she has nowhere else to go, that it would make her stateless.
If it makes her stateless, that's something for the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, who hears the appeal, to determine.
And that can happen without her having access to lawyers to get her in touch with the Special Immigrations Appeal?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if she doesn't lodge an appeal, the decision stands.
Okay, so somebody might have to do that on her behalf. Ellie, you don't think she should come back to this country?
No. I think she's a threat to British society, and that I think if there's any legal way to stop her from coming back into this country and to safeguard British citizens, then that option should be explored.
One of her old neighbours in that film says she's simply a young woman who's made a terrible mistake.
No, well, I would completely disagree with that. I don't think that she was groomed. I mean, we cannot refute that she was a child because she was a child, she was legally a child, but she consumed propaganda for Islamic State. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She managed to get the means by which she was able to leave this country and go out there and join Islamic State. And she subsequently married a Dutch jihadi fighter and, you know, for all intents and purposes, joined Islamic State, joined a proscribed terrorist organization, which was out there to wage war against the West.
And yet it could all be a terrible mistake. She was very young. You admit that. Between the ages of, let's say, 15 and 19, did you not make decisions which you came to regret?
I didn't join a terrorist group, and I don't think that the idea that this is not a mistake, this is not some casual mistake. It's not as if she watched a video or she said something on Facebook. This is not what happened. She actually found the ways in which to go out there and join a terrorist group. And that's not a mistake or a decision that should have been taken lightly, and we should hold her to account for that. She was part of a brutal regime, a genocidal regime that raped women. But in what sense was she a part of it if all she did was become a parent to 3 children and marry somebody who was part of the group? In what sense does that mean? There's guilt by association, you're saying? Yes, well, no, but not even by association. She is a fundamental part of what Islamic State were trying to achieve. They were encouraging women to go out there to marry fighters and to have children. That was part of what women were tasked to do when they got to Islamic State and when they joined up. So she was playing her part. The fact that she wasn't a fighter, I think, is not really relevant because she wasn't allowed to be a fighter. That's not what IS allowed her to do. They wanted her to marry and to spread the ideology. We don't know yet if she was instrumental in spreading ISIS propaganda. She may well have been.
And that may well be something that we find out in the future if she does come back here. Afia, when you listen to what Ellie has to say, when you read the headlines that there have been since Shamima gave her first interview to Anthony Lloyd of the Times, when you hear that, do you think it is in any way reasonable for people to be scared of her?
I think, building on what Ellie said, I think we need to be so careful with this clash of civilizations rhetoric that it's ISIS and, you know, they're going to come along and they're going to fight against the West, and that's what people are going over there for. We need to be very careful how we approach Shamima Begum's case given her age. We need to be very careful with how we approach it simply because of things like the prevent strategy, which do masquerade under the guise of safeguarding a vulnerability. We need to approach it in a way where we address Shamima Begum's reality before she went. She is a product of the British education system, of British society. She has not lived elsewhere, so she is fundamentally Britain's problem.
Can I go back to one thing you said at the very beginning here? We must re-examine a lot of the premises that have been made, one of which was that this group was fighting against the West. Did I misunderstand you there? Because that is undoubtedly what they were trying to do, bring down Western civilization, because they loathed it.
Yeah, 100%. But is that why Shamima Begum went there? What was her reason for going there? And should we be ascribing that to her as well? Or was there something else in her reality, where she was living, how she was brought up, what she was being taught that?
Are you saying she's too young, too stupid, too naive? What? I mean,
I think
she made the decision.
Yeah, but I do think she was 15 years of age. And if we are saying that when you're 15, you can't make those decisions, if you can't consent to certain things, then you also don't really know what you're doing. And she was groomed, essentially. And she was, and I think it's really interesting how we're not looking at her case with this lens. But also, if we are going to strip her of her citizenship, which I completely understand, if someone is a threat to national security and does join a terrorist organization that has sworn to kind of bring down Western civilization, they are a threat to national security. But let's be consistent with the application of that. Why is it that we are doing with this with Shamima Begum, but not with everybody else?
Yeah, so that is something we will go into, the number of people who did go to Syria, lived with ISIS, worked with ISIS, fought with ISIS, who have come back to this country. We'll go into that in just a moment. So Richard, let me just ask you this. I think the age of criminal responsibility in this country, in the UK, is 10. Before that, you can't be deemed to be responsible for anything you've done. And yet we're hearing people say 15. She couldn't make proper decisions based on what she was because she was a child. How does that hold up in law?
Well, I mean, as far as I understand, there's 2 parts to this question. So firstly, Begum hasn't been charged, as far as I understand, with any criminal acts. So whilst the age of criminal responsibility in the UK is 10, there are no charges against her and no means of pursuing that prosecution or even any kind of trial because of this attempt to strip her citizenship, essentially preempting the way that justice should work. But we also have the language of prevent, of counter-terrorism that we have to bring into this. Now, within the language of prevent, of channel, of contest, all of this across the last 10 years has very much been explicitly focused on safeguarding and vulnerability. The 2015 Prevent and Channel focus on providing support for people who are identified as being vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism, and radicalization is described as a process in which
you're quoting there, I know, because I think I've got something very similar in front of me. You're quoting from a government document, yeah?
Yes, yeah, I am. I'm quoting from the 2015 Prevent Duty by the UK government.
Well, let me ask you about something else here. There is another government manual in which it says if a crime has been committed, then somebody should be prosecuted if they come back to this country. If no crime has been committed, they should be assisted in reintegrating and take part in a de-radicalization program. We are not hearing anything like that from the government, even though it has written that down as its recommendation in cases such as this.
Yeah, and this is a big problem and a big worry, I think, for anyone who sort of works in and around counter-terrorism and counter-extremism, because what that's doing is that's essentially undermining the last 10 years of language that has been built within counter-terrorism and responses to extremism. The legitimacy upon which Prevent is presenting itself to the wider community, particularly within the context post-2015, where we have the Prevent duty, where we put greater focus and pressure and obligation on the public sector to report instances of extremists and people vulnerable to radicalization, is that individuals are vulnerable. They face vulnerabilities, and we need to tackle those vulnerabilities and create greater resilience. Now, if the government can then remove this at any instance that it wants, then we really have a problem of, as has been flagged up by Afia, of consistency across counter-terrorism and what exactly it is and how exactly it works.
Well, indeed, picking and choosing. Ellie, you say what you want to say, and then I'll come back to you.
I just want to go back to the grooming issue and also the age of criminal responsibility issue, because I think that's important to clear up. As you said, the age of criminal responsibility is 10. So we know that now. She is criminally responsible if she has committed a crime. This is not really up for debate. Also, with the grooming language, we're thereby saying that she had no free will in deciding to join a prescribed terrorist group, and we're stripping her of any agency in that decision. We're saying that she was groomed by someone in order to go out there.
I think Afia said she could have been.
Well, I'm saying that language is highly problematic.
Okay, we'll come back on that, Afia.
I think it goes deeper, actually, into psychoanalysis a little bit, and kind of looking at someone and saying, what made you do what you did? Because what's going on, we're saying, yep, she's got the agency, she's gone and done this, but why did she do it?
What I want to ask you about, Fahad, is there have been cases where citizenship has been revoked and it has worked. Do you have to have dual citizenship for that?
For revocation to happen?
Yes.
Absolutely, because if you don't, you would be rendered stateless, as happened last year with 2 British Bangladeshi citizens, or British citizens of Bangladeshi origin, who, when they were deprived, the court found that they'd been rendered stateless, so the deprivation order was unlawful. I mean, I want to come back here about something about Richard is talking about prosecutions. Since 2014, we have successfully convicted almost 200 people of Syria-related terrorism, including people who've returned, but the vast majority who've never even set foot in Syria, but were convicted based on their intentions and their preparatory acts. So for it to be said that we have insufficient laws, as some commentators have said, to prosecute Shamima Begum, or anybody else who returns.
Are many of those in jail?
They've been convicted and imprisoned 10, 15 years, 20 years, lengthy sentences. So, I mean, we have laws in this, as we mentioned, to be a member of a prescribed organization, to wear the insignia of a prescribed organization, to express support for a prescribed organization. All of these are terrorist offenses. I mean, just last month, Sajid Javid and the Home Secretary passed a new law into power, which gives them the ability to designate certain areas around the world. By virtue of merely entering those areas, you could be guilty of a criminal offence.
So your suspicion is that there is a reason other than the technicalities of the law why she is being hung out, if you like, why she is being stripped of her citizenship. Well, what would that reason be?
Well, let's give it some context. Let's give it context. In 2017, we had 2 atrocities in this country, London Bridge and Manchester. In the wake of those atrocities, over 104 British citizens were deprived of their citizenship. Shamima Begum was not one of those. And the way it works is that the security services have draw up a list of people of interest abroad, and they pass that to the Home Secretary and make an advice that you should deprive these people of their citizenship on the basis that they pose a threat to national security. Shamima Begum was not one of those 104 people.
Even though her name was known?
Even she was very well known at the time. And even after she surfaced again last month, still there was absolutely no decision made to deprive her of her citizenship. Only after this huge public display of anger and resentment and calls for her not to be allowed to come back, thereafter did Sajid Javid decide that she should be deprived of her citizenship. So how did the intelligence assessment change in that week?
Are you suggesting it hadn't changed?
Well, I don't know if it's changed. I'm asking the question.
Let's ask everybody else here. Is this being done as a knee-jerk reaction? Richard, you've been quiet for a little while. Is this being done, do you think, as a knee-jerk reaction, not because the threat level from Shamima Begum in any way has increased?
Yeah, I think this absolutely is. To me, this reads as if Sajid Javid is essentially playing to the gallery and essentially conducting some sort of trial by right-wing media in order to increase support at a time of great kind of UK political upheaval, when chances are there will be a general election at some point in the near future. There really doesn't seem to be that much evidence that she does present a threat to British society.
I want to quote something to you from Shiraz Maha from the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation. He says most of those who wish to return to the UK who've been involved in this sort of way express remorse and regret, but it's a product of the fact that ISIS is being defeated. They were all cheering on its atrocities and barbarism when they felt it was winning. Now, my point to you is that Shamima Begum's crime, if you like, is that she didn't say she regretted joining. She didn't say that she felt the Manchester bombings were wrong. That is what got her into the really hot water, which is going to be difficult to get out of.
Yeah, this is absolutely the case. We've had individuals from essentially across the counter-terror debate that have come out against stripping Begum of her citizenship, from Sarah Khan, from Majid Nouaz, from Kay Joy, Costa Quillian, who have condemned this as inappropriate and as counterproductive. I don't think this is in any way supporting or in any way kind of creating more security. We've had various statements from the House of Lords saying that making individuals stateless doesn't make it easier to control their movements, but actually it does the opposite, it rather makes them more difficult to control. Citizen deprivation has been characterised as ineffective and a counterproductive weapon against terrorism within independent reviews, by saying that it releases individuals who may have convicted criminal acts, as is the case here. It makes terrorism into a foreign problem and disincentivises the means to create proper responses in the UK, and it results in complex and costly legal battles.
Okay, so Ellie, let me put the point to you that her crime, as I put it in quotes, is that she just simply hasn't said, I disown this group.
No, I mean, I don't think that helped her case, certainly. The interviews were where she showed little regret, no remorse. She seemed kind of a bit... she seemed unconcerned, really, about the serious ramifications of how people would respond to what she's done. She did kind of say, I understand why people in the UK would be hesitant, and she
isn't it wrong, therefore, to pillory her when 40% of the 900 people who went to join ISIS, 40% are now back in this country, apart from those who lost their lives. Isn't it wrong to pillory her for simply saying what she said without examining the case further? And
I don't think,
pilloried.
Fine. I don't think that the problem, though, I don't think he's made this decision off the back of the TV interview. I would argue against that. I think he's made this decision because she is a threat to British society.
Well, why hasn't that decision been made with so many other people? In what sense is she different, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Well, I mean,
other than the fact that she sat there, gave an interview, and didn't say sorry for the actions of ISIS.
Well, she isn't different in the sense that this has been over 100 people have been stripped of their citizenship. You know, Dutch nationals are stripped of their citizenship. This is a very regular occurrence for for the governments to decide that someone poses a threat to national security and to thereby strip them of their citizenship. This is a legal process.
Yeah, but that 100 represents less than 20% of those who went out there to do what they did.
Yes, but she is one of them. We think that she...
So what makes her different?
Well, what makes her different is the fact that she went out there willingly. She chose to get married. She chose to have children out there. She didn't in the last 4 years at any point.
I mean, to be fair, you're saying she chose to get married, she chose to have children. the people who David's mentioned have returned chose to get involved in fighting and involved in atrocities, and they've been allowed to come back. They've been successfully prosecuted. They've been placed in de-radicalization programs. This aspect that you're talking about, grooming, this is a terminology that the counter-terrorism unit uses. It comes up in legal cases about how children are groomed, boys and girls.
Sure.
We've had a 15-year-old in, I think it was Newcastle, who was involved in being groomed to carry out a terrorist attack in this country. This is language that, I know that Henry Jackson do not like the language. Well, there seems to be a conflict between your opinion and the actual opinion of the HJS. But this is normative language that is used with these children. It doesn't mean we're condoning what they do. It doesn't mean anyone is tolerating what they do. But it is understanding a process that's taking place.
Isn't it right? Ellie, quickly, before we go to the others, and we are running a little bit out, wouldn't it be the sensible thing to do to bring her back here, examine what she did, look at her motives? If she was guilty of a crime, perhaps prosecute her, put her in jail, if not de-radicalise her. Isn't that the sensible thing to do?
No, the sensible thing to do is to safeguard British citizens and to put their interests
above. But if she's de-radicalised, does that not safeguard British citizens?
Above someone who went over there to join a terrorist group. Why are we so concerned about how we're losing track of the real victims?
You know, the funny thing is, Ellie, it might cost millions of pounds to bring into force the things that you're suggesting, when that money could be spent better elsewhere.
Why would it be? She's been stripped. If she chooses to appeal it, then that's something that
then
might
the British government would have to fight it, and we know what that costs.
Well, we're not at that stage yet, so I don't think that's necessary.
Richard, do you think she will ever end up in Britain, or perhaps as her husband wants for the family to go to Holland? What are the chances of that happening?
I don't know. That's a lot of speculation. I think there's very shaky legal grounds that currently the UK is on. But as with Theresa May before, Sajid Javid is very aggressively pursuing this line of trying to look tough, but effectively being quite ineffective on terrorism. There are a lot of other cases within Europe, within the EU28, where foreign fighters have been treated differently, and individuals who've gone to Syria and Iraq have been treated differently. There's the much lauded Aarhus or Copenhagen model in Denmark, where a lot of individuals have been brought back from Syria and Iraq and have been given support in terms of integrating back into society, have given support in terms of healthcare, in terms of training, and as a result of that have successfully reintegrated back into society. So I think this idea that we just have one sort of essentially hard hammer approach towards individuals who should come back from
look at each case individually.
Is very problematic. Yeah, absolutely.
Ellie, before I come to you, Afia, I'd just like to ask Ellie one more point. In the notes I was given, it said you think she's only wants to come back here to go to the NHS for her.
Well, she originally said that she wanted to have her baby here, so yes, that was a concern. I think that the problem is we're forgetting why she went out there. We're treating her as if she's a refugee that we found in Syria that has done no wrong, and we're saying, oh, actually, we don't want her to come back. That's not what's happening here. She is someone who believed in terrorist ideology, that wanted to join a genocidal regime, that rapes people.
I bought Mao's little red book. Well, I got it for free when I was 14.
But you didn't go and prescribe that ideology.
I was interested in finding out.
But this is where the language of grooming becomes ridiculous, because people who are groomed into doing something they don't want to do, then you're talking about something in which she wanted to go and kill someone. Are we going to go and say, oh...
We're not saying she wanted to go and kill somebody.
She wanted to join a terrorist group that goes out there and kills people. So do we want to say that, oh, all murderers are groomed, all rapists are groomed?
Well, they could be a product of their environment,
sure,
and that is something that is often argued.
This is just not suitable. And when we talk about the law, when we talk about how we're going to criminally prosecute people, to say they've all been groomed, they've all been brainwashed, they didn't know what they were doing.
No one's saying that.
Bear with me. You two can carry this on in just a moment. But Afia, I want to come to you as we near the end of the programme. You are a teacher. You've taken time out from class this morning to come and talk to us, but you're going back to school in an hour or so, and you're going to be teaching children aged roughly 15, 16, the same age that Shamima Begum was when she first left the country and when she settled there, about the dangers of poisonous talk during the Weimar Republic time. Now, that is what we're seeing here, isn't it? The parallels between what you're going to be telling them about in history and what is happening today. How do you get through to them that it would be the wrong course to take, to listen?
talk to somebody. And this is why I take kind of issue with the prevent strategy, because I don't believe it kind of allows for that classroom environment that, you know, like classrooms as safe spaces. So I've cultivated sort of an environment in my classroom where we are able to discuss loads of different things, and we are able to draw parallels, and we're able to look at history and say, look, fertile breeding ground was created for dictatorship. How did that happen? Why were the German community angry? Why was Hitler able to come into power? And that's sort of something that we can juxtapose with today. What's going on in British society? What led Shamima Begum to do what she did? And we have had the discussions about Shamima Begum, and a lot of the students kind of have the opinion that, yeah, she should be brought back, but she should be tried and tested to the full extent of the law, and then kind of prosecuted here. And I think it is really interesting to get kind of fresh perspectives from students, because the way they draw those parallels, the way they apply history, the kind of question they always ask is, well, why is it happening now then? Why is it happening now? And being unable to answer that question, I think, really brings me to reevaluate what we're doing as educators, and if we're able to actively help actualize students' aspirations and help them understand what's going on.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. Afia, thank you very much indeed. Ellie, thanks for coming in. Fahad, good to have you. And I think one of the points that Afia was making there is that it's all about asking questions, whether we get the opportunity, we as society, whether the courts get the opportunity to ask those questions of Shamima Begum, whether indeed they should. That's a matter for a future programme, and I hope you watch that one. Thank you for watching this one. From me, David Foster, and the Roundtable team. Goodbye for now.